Alright, a year off and like 6 false starts, here I am. Seriously, my Google Drive is starting to look like somebody who keeps telling everyone, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel someday, and just never does. Except, I guess I'm like, I don't know, 12 steps ahead. But, if it were easy, everyone would do it. And everyone does it anyway. That's the other half of that logic, right? The Dunder Mifflin effect at all. Or am I just a malapropist? Anyway, video topic time. Deus Ex. Yeah, we're doing a video game. Suck it. There might be gameplay here. I don't know yet. Deus Ex is a game very close to me. It's the first video game I can clearly remember playing on my dad's old tan Windows XP PC in his home office, back when shit was numbered in Pentiums and Bitcoin was something people did in old Western cartoons. It's also the first game I truly learned to speedrun. That's right, you are watching a video from the 27th place Deus Ex Any Percent category. The speedrun is a ton of fun because the game more or less falls apart around you as you run through the levels. There's very few straight up skips, you're mostly just doing the game very quickly. But what keeps me coming back, and made me put the speedrun aside for a more contemplative playthrough for funsies, is the game's narrative. In terms of world building, Deus Ex is a masterclass, even more so in 2021 than before. YouTuber far larger than myself, Chris Franklin of Arid Signal fame, made a great video back in 2017 about Deus Ex's relevance in the Trump era. And now that we're still somehow in the middle of basically the plot of Deus Ex, and that I've gotten a big education in politics and reading works of fiction, I wanted to revisit it. Deus Ex is a game pitched by director Warren Spector as a game where every conspiracy theory is true, and fans of the game and of conspiracy theories will recognize all of them, even in the literal opening cutscene. A cutscene, by the way, that I could probably rewrite from memory from watching it so many times. I couldn't get past Liberty Island as a kid, so as far as I knew, that was the entire game. Just in the opening, we get a dose of federal government conspiracy, a terrorist attack in New York, a plague with a vaccine, riots in the streets, martial law, and an anti-domestic terrorist organization in which the player is ostensibly working, and a reference to St. Thomas Aquinas, who you can look up on Wikipedia and learn about Bob Page's philosophy by reading real-world flavor text. The game accomplishes what Assassin's Creed tries to do 2 decades later to mediocre success. If you Google Aquinas, the Trilateral Commission, the Illuminati, Area 51, Vandenberg Air Force Base, you'll be reading stuff that will help you understand the game better. And it's real. It's literally flavor text. That's real. On my most recent run, I heard a line about Rex 84 that I'd never heard before, and I looked it up, and it's a crazy conspiracy about government kill lists that's super cool to think about. If you play the game without looking, you'll run into a lot of interesting ideas, but if you dig and really read everything, you'll find a world ravaged by plague, barely hanging on. There is a newspaper in the game talking about hospitals being overwhelmed because of outbreaks of the Grey Death virus in cities and people doing political favors for early access to plague vaccines, and the first villain you meet that talks to you instead of shooting you says he thinks the government made the plague on purpose. So much of this game is a field trip through government conspiracies, and you gallivant through all kinds of places and meet people who are all basically about the same thing. You even get a choice at the end as to what your leading political philosophy is. And when I was young, I always took the Illuminati ending, because I thought being in on the conspiracy was better than any of the alternatives. None of them are really the good ending, and the sequel basically smashes the 2 apocalypse endings together, but now I always take the internet blackout ending. Out of the most influential immersive sim games, the Looking Glass canon, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, Fallout New Vegas, just to name a few, Deus Ex has held up very well in terms of social commentary. It gets the details wrong, but Tracer Tong's opinion that the problems of the world arise when power is placed in the hands of the few rather than the many, and stops to establish anarchism by destroying the very system that allows very few people to control much of the world. The theme of consolidation is present throughout the game, whereas the Illuminati and Helios endings give you the opportunity to basically take the world over yourself in so many ways. Tong's ending allows you to distribute power in an egalitarian sense. The Illuminati ending, which, may I remind you, ends with you and the Illuminati ending, which, may I remind you, ends with you and an Illuminati leader in the exact same room from the opening cutscene, as well as a famous quote from Milton, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. If you take this ending, the room becomes significant. You see it 3 times over the course of the game. Once as an outsider looking in, seeing a very performative version of the conversation meant to clue you in. You see it a second time as an interloper, where the true nature of the building it is in is revealed to you, and where the invisible hand becomes visible for the first time. And the third time is the actual ending, when you become the invisible hand itself. It's the classic authoritarian solution. I am fine with massive inequality and an unjust and exploitative hierarchy as long as I'm at the top of it. Really, JC should have just stuck with UNATCO for this ending, could have gotten there a lot quicker. And then the Helios ending sounds like the Elon Musk ending with a Voltaire quote: "If God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him." Another way Deus Ex held up well, and to modern scrutiny this throws the game into a very weird context for me, is that the idea of its villains being a giant corporate hegemonic technocrats, but its heroes being basically the January 6th crew? This might sound fucking insane, but playing this game again, I feel like the NSF are basically a sanded down version of the people who scream about QAnon conspiracies on Facebook. Again, the game gets the details wrong, but the broad strokes absolutely right. I mean, for fuck's sake, the game opens with a takeover of the Statue of Liberty, while the NSF is taking vaccines away and distributing them while working with foreign agents to create their own version of the vaccine. Although, to me, this leads to a downfall of trying to read the game as a true social commentary piece now. I don't know the developers are trying to make a liberalist takedown of conservative and corporate hierarchy, but it all comes off very, libertarian. What I think I mean is that the game is less interested in material conditions for the people JC is really trying to save, and is trying to find ways that technology itself can save the world from the problems facing it. In a world where the problems facing it are universally agreed upon to be exploitative class structures, the thinking machine revolution will not help anyone, and a God from the machine solution introduces more forms of unjust hierarchy. This is why I think the blowing up the internet ending is the best one, because it outright rejects a technocratic solution, and it reflects the self-awareness of the developers. I don't know the politics of Deus Ex's writers, but what I do know is that they knew that winning the game wasn't just about guns and bullets and explosives and mecha and beating bosses. I know for a fact they are a lot smarter than 90% of video game writers out there. This scene in the club in Hong Kong is probably one of the smartest exchanges in all of video games. It's about the nature of power, contrasting a vision of China allowing for freedom through iron-fisted authoritarianism versus a view of the US run with a shell of government run by corporate and oligarchical hegemony. Deus Ex doesn't deal with issues of race, gender, disability, partially because they don't make for engaging gameplay, but because they didn't know anything. They weren't writing a political treatise, they were writing a dumb science fiction video game based on TV shows and movies they liked. That's the thing about this game, this politically dense being made and coming out in the pre-9/11 days. I doubt anyone could have predicted that the world for the developers was going to change that considerably. And that's probably the biggest downfall. The game is made by mostly affluent white guys for more affluent white guys. It's a very centrist idea of, let's just throw a bunch of conspiracies into a game and see what happens. It's broken because the problems faced by the most vulnerable and the people that J.C. Denton is explicitly the messiah of will not fundamentally change under an AI or under the Illuminati. Genre fiction, especially socially conscious genre fiction, tells us a lot about the world we're living in. It's almost as if the writers knew, because 9/11 is basically canon in the Deus Ex universe, and those events are what set in motion the insane roller coaster the game takes you on. Really, what saddens me the most is that all of Deus Ex's sequels feel like they're not even trying. Human Revolution got closest, Mankind Divided did that, yikes, and Invisible War, well, we don't like to talk about that. I'm just glad I got to talk about more crazy sci-fi nonsense for a while. Y'all should go play Deus Ex, it's really cheap nowadays and a ton of fun.